My name is Ricky Ott, and I direct Ultimate Civics, a project of Earth Island Institute. Welcome to Ultimate Civics, foundational civics instructions for classroom and communities. This instruction is intended as a guide to use the free lesson materials posted here. In Lesson 2, we explore the concept that our rights and the government that we created to secure our rights is actually based on what we value and love. Our essential questions for this lesson are: what are civic values? What are types of wealth support well-being? What are some of the civics values stated in the Declaration of Independence and in the Preamble to the Constitution? To identify our values, we actually start with a small group activity and a reflection where we sit in silence for 3 minutes and write. Write what we like. Write what has worth or value to you. Write what is useful or important to you. And the reason this is done in silence is because it's really a reflection. It's what you like, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about shared values after 3 minutes. So when we come back from this and convene after 3 minutes, here's an example, a list of values from the audience, okay? Audience is collected in past workshops. And at this point, the person who is facilitating this training would be having a whiteboard and be able to actually, in real time, write down what are examples from the audience. At this point, you ask people, what is it that you like? And hands come up and you start writing. And you make a list of about 10, 12, 15 until you get to the bottom of your board. So here's a list from past examples: family and friends, places of prayer and worship, pets and horses, freedom of speech, health and well-being, gardening and food, home, hunting and guns, community theater, and outdoor sports. What we do next, also as a group activity, is we categorize our personal values into 4 types of wealth, of shared wealth. So before we do this, we have to learn about these types of wealth. So here we go. Now, usually this slide is up because there's a separate chalkboard or a whiteboard to be writing on. In this case, we're going to have to remember these. So economic wealth makes sense. It's things with a sticker price, things that have value or could be sold or bartered, and it's the total worth of these things. Environmental wealth are healthy ecosystems, all life, and the natural habitat to support it. These are the things we're most familiar with. Social wealth doesn't have a sticker price. It's things in demand with no price, like trust, happiness, family, our friends, our health, safety, our culture. And political wealth is pretty much what it sounds like. It's human rights. It's, importantly, respect for human rights by governments and businesses that we allow to operate. So those are our 4 types of wealth. Now let's go back to our list of values and see what we can do about categorizing. Again, this is a group activity, and it is extremely powerful. It works incredibly well in polarized communities, communities that have very diversity of philosophies, all in the same room. What our culture tends to do is have people focus on what we disagree on, but actually what we agree on is much, much more. And this exercise brings that out and serves as a way to bind people in the room and minimize some of that polarization. So, family and friends. And you just ask people what, you call on the hands. And importantly, you ask people to explain what they're thinking. because the explanation is what's key. People might not be thinking the same way as you, and this is about broadening our tolerance and our acceptance of other people. So what type of wealth does this value represent? Family and friends. Well, family and friends was right square there on social wealth. So family and friends is social wealth. Places of worship and prayer. Again, that's a place where we gather, where we see friends, so it's definitely social wealth. People might describe it as economic. People might describe it as political as well. So there's just an example. I had one student in one high school class that he was a young budding astrologer, and he managed to tie everything, no matter what it was, into astrology. So you need to listen to what people are thinking. Pets and horses, social wealth. You obviously own a pet, not because they're worth money, but because you do things, you go on walks, you ride. Of course, it's expensive, and it's about being out in the environment. So we're going to put the environment in there too. Freedom of speech. You get the idea that it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And maybe these things start out like freedom of speech as political, and then the more you think about it, well, you have to have political wealth actually determines our social wealth and our environmental wealth. If we don't have political wealth, we might not have jobs, all kinds of things might happen. So as the discussion deepens, this is about a 15-minute exercise. What everybody wises up to is that all of these forms of wealth are interrelated, and that's the whole point of this exercise. You pull or you diminish any one of these, you diminish the whole. What is the whole? Well, the whole happens to be when society reflects our shared values. This is what our quality of life is about. When a person describes their quality of life, they could be describing any one of those four things, okay? They all contribute. On an individual level, we're talking about quality of life is our well-being, our health, our mood, money in the pocket to spend at the movie theater. And our quality of life as a society is called public welfare, well-being, the public well-being. So when we use these words, later on, we'll know what we're really talking about here is our overall quality, our health, our quality of life, our well-being. Now, so here are some questions to work out in small groups or with a partner. Just have these discussions and then we come back and share. Here we have a question. Why does environmental wealth matter to health and family? So in discussing this, we realize that our environmental wealth is very critical to our own health. So if we live in areas that are polluted, then we're probably going to have more health issues. And in fact, in our United States, our health is actually first predicated, or you can guess a person's health by their zip code, okay? So that gets us to the next question. Why does economic wealth matter to health and home? It's because if you have the misfortune of living within 300 feet of a major factory or next door to one of these polluting industries, maybe you can't afford to move away. Maybe that's the problem. So economic wealth actually determines, in part, your health. It's where you live. And the final question in this set is, why does political wealth matter to well-being and welfare? So why does political wealth matter to the individual, but also to the overall quality of health of the whole society? And there's a lot said in this photo. It's about why are people rallying? Well, they don't have political power. They need jobs. They need to be treated respectfully. They need to be treated with equality. They need equal opportunity. And that's why political wealth matters to everything. And of course, this was from the 50s and 60s. But it's still valid to this day. Political wealth matters to everything. So now we start stepping this exercise up. We've talked about our individual values and our shared values. And now we're going to look at a subset of our shared values known as civic values. specifically civic values. And civic values are our fundamental beliefs, our guiding principles in the way we govern ourselves. So we're going to look at the Declaration of Independence first, and then the Constitution for some of these shared civic values. And before we review and actually read a portion of the Declaration of Independence, we need to review some definitions. Make sure we're all on the same page. So inalienable or unalienable, as it was said back then. And what I'd like to do here is actually ask the audience for definitions and see what the intel is. You'd be surprised, even middle school students know a lot of these answers. And so unalienable here means it cannot be transferred or sold. And therefore, an unalienable right is what? So again, definitions from the participants, and we come back with kind of a consensus that it's a universal human right that cannot be transferred, sold, or denied because a person is born with them. They are also called natural rights. Finally, liberty. And there, surprisingly, is a number of adults that do not know the definition to this. What I always get when I ask what is liberty is freedom. The question is, freedom from what? So it's actually freedom from government interference on one's way of life. That is why we started this whole government process. We have our values and we want freedom to be able to appreciate what we love. So now, reading a section of the Declaration, we are going to look for shared civic values in this statement. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Group activity, what do you see as a shared value? Same way that you conducted the wealth activity. Listen to what people say. Make sure everybody can hear what is being said. It really expands our viewpoints. So truths, okay, there's one, oops. So identify the shared civic values. Truths, okay. And other people have pointed out self-evident because that is implied that there's education, that people are informed, and they know these things. They know what our rights are. They know what's truth and untrue. Created equal is another one, equality. Endowed by their Creator. And one audience, the young person thought that the Creator was mother, which was very interesting. It spawned a whole conversation. Creator with unalienable rights. That's another shared civic value. We know we have these things. They're valuable to us. And then, of course, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as individual rights in the Declaration. So, what is the purpose of forming a government? Why did we go to all this trouble to begin with? And where does the government get its power to exist? That is also envisioned by the writers of the Declaration of Independence. And so here's another statement from the Declaration as a principle that to secure these rights, these inalienable rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. No consent, no government. That's the way it should work. That was the way it worked as a statement of principle, okay? Now, how did we get this into law? We had to actually secure this idea. This is an idea, a democratic form of government with civic values and somehow our inalienable rights, which are very broad and not really enforceable as stated. That's the Declaration of Independence. So what we did was, the founders did, was we took these ideas and we wrote them down as law, right? So the democratic form of government became the Constitution, okay? And the inalienable rights became codified into law as the Bill of Rights. also known as constitutional rights or fundamental rights. So that's kind of the setup of how we took our individual values and moved them into shared values, shared civic values, and finally actually codified what we could into actual law, legally binding, enforceable law. So let's now look at the preamble to the Constitution. And again, one more time, identify shared civic values in this as a small group activity. And there's no circles or anything fancy this time, but it's the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, so there it is, one value is our government. That's what we're striving for. To establish justice. Justice, fair treatment of each other, that's another value. Ensure domestic tranquility, also peace, right? Peace is tranquility. So another value. Provide for the common defense, provide for our mutual protection and safety and security. Another value. Promote the general welfare, which we now know what that means. A healthy, thriving society. And secure the blessings of liberty, which are our inalienable rights, to ourselves and our posterity, thinking ahead to the future generations who will come. Do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. At this point, we've pretty much exhausted one classroom hour, so this is a good pause point for everybody. And then next we will continue with the second part of where we go now is the Bill of Rights, an in-depth look at our Bill of Rights.